On this video, I'm going to answer the question of, after all of the deals that you've done, how would you do things differently if you were just getting started? And how would you build net worth and income from real estate if you were just getting going again and had to do it all over again? I just did a video recently on selling my last rental property and what I did with the money. And from that, there came a flooding in of questions about, well, what you talked about was now knowing what you know now, you were selling those houses. Well, if you could go back and do it again with the information and knowledge that you've been teaching and all these people are learning that, should I do something differently from the beginning to help me grow my net worth and grow my income? So I'm going to answer that today. I get asked the question a lot, if I could go back and do things differently, what would I change and what would I do differently in my journey? My answer is always the same, and it always will be the same. I wouldn't change anything. Ultimately, everything that I've learned, everything that I've done through all the transactions, the ups, the downs, the goods, the bads, the mistakes that I made, the big wins, all of it was for a reason. It was a path that I was on and that I was going to continue to go. So don't beat yourself up for the past and any mistakes that were made or anything that you should have, could have, would have done differently, and move forward. So I look back, and all of those experiences have built me up to the person that I am and the business owner that I am to allow me to do all the things that I can do now. However, what I do think is I think we can learn a lot from others, other people's wins, other people's struggles, other people's mistakes. And that's what I want to do right now is I want to share that information with you. So the question that I got was, after selling all of your rental properties and all of those things and what you said on the last video that you made, knowing now what you know, knowing then what you know now, would you have done the same thing? Would you have still tried to buy 10 rental properties? Would you still try to get that kind of cash flow? Or would you have done things differently in building your business and looking for net worth growth and cash flow increase? And so that's ultimately the question. And really, I think the answer goes back to a lot of things. So everybody's going to be different. There's a lot of different skill sets. There's a lot of different locations. There's a lot of different market timing that's happening all the time. And it's always changing. So all of that has to come into play when you're trying to think about what's happening. But can you learn from some of the things that I learned? Absolutely. So my story basically goes back to, I talked about it on the last video. If you haven't seen it or you haven't watched the last show, make sure that you do that, and then you come into this with all of that understanding. But basically, in short, I bought 10 rental properties over the span of a few years. And then over the past 2 years or so, I started selling them off, because what I said was, when they become vacant, if I wouldn't buy them for the price that I bought them for when I did, because of the skills and the knowledge and the business that I have, I'm going to sell them. And every single one of them, when they came vacant, I sold them, because I can buy deeper discounted properties now with the marketing skills that I have, the sales skills, the team, all of that stuff than I did even as the market has increased. So, and I also have different goals and different strategy now, but I also had some pain points. So you really need to think, like, where are your strengths and where are your weaknesses? So the first thing that I would do is I would do that. I would do kind of a SWOT analysis, okay? So strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats is something that we use in the military, they use it in business, all these different areas. Like, what are some of those things? So what are some of the strengths that I have? Even if I was just getting started, what am I really, really good at? What are some of my weaknesses? So I would say the weaknesses that I had in Pensacola specifically were no good property managers. I couldn't find one that would manage my property and I would feel comfortable with. So that was a big problem for me. So I ended up self-managing. I was putting different pieces in place. If I could go back and do it again, I would probably work a lot harder to find a property manager that I trusted, that was really good at what they did, and I can buy these properties and offload them to them. The other thing that I saw was really the returns on my money weren't as good as what I wanted. At the time, they were great because I didn't have any other outlets or avenues. But now I have a lot more avenues to have a bigger return on my capital. I also wasn't paying a lot of taxes back then. I'm paying a lot more taxes, or have the potential to pay a lot more taxes now, because I have a lot more active income coming in than I did then. So I'm looking for some different things now than I was then. So all of these things, to understand all of that, and my goals at that time, I wasn't able to think as big as I can now. I wasn't like as a level of entrepreneur, I wasn't moving up as a higher level entrepreneur. I was still a very early entrepreneur, and I thought, making $500,000, $600,000 a year was kind of the limit, or maybe $1 million. Like, I just wasn't there yet to say, why can't I make $10 million a year? And so all of these things, the mindset, the skills, the ability, the location, the other people that I had in the marketplace, the potential partners, all of these things just weren't there yet. And when I talk about my mindset as an entrepreneur, I think that's really one of the most important, is I was okay buying 10 rental properties and getting to $100,000 a year. And I was gonna take that and supplement it with my active military income and my retirement. I was gonna do 20 years of active duty military, get a retirement, and have like 50,000 coming in from that, like 100,000 from my rentals, and maybe I'd flip a couple houses a year in the beginning. And that was kind of the mindset that I had. It was kind of small, okay? Which might be big for a lot of you right now. So wherever you are in that place, all of that's gonna define where you're going in the direction and the decisions that you make. So for me, as I grew as an entrepreneur, I just started saying, well, I can actually do more. I have more potential. I have more capacity to do bigger and better things. I started building bigger relationships, thinking bigger. And what that did was it said, you know what, like building this rental portfolio, I have these 10 houses. They're all kind of Class A rentals. They do pretty well, but they also have higher upkeep. They're building equity, but I have the opportunity and opened a door somewhere else to invest that capital and that equity into something that paid higher dividends. So what you need to think about for you is where are you, and really come up with a list of all that stuff and try to think about where you're going. But you don't have to think 10 years down the road or 30 years down the road and make those decisions right now. Just think like 3 to 5 years down the road and figure out where you want to go, and then you can just kind of pivot along the way. So for me, it was just when they came vacant, I would look at my, what I had available to me, where I could put the funds, and do I want to put the funds somewhere else that make a bigger return? The only way that I'll know if I'm right is if I did both directions. I did what I'm doing now, making the decision to sell the properties and invest in something else, or keep them and then evaluate it 10 years down the road. So like, we're never gonna know if the decisions that we make are correct. So what we need to do is we need to evaluate the space that we're in. And in the military, I realized when I was flying helicopters, I had to make decisions really, really fast. So I'd take the information that I had, I'd collect it, I'd try to make the best decision that I could in the moment. And then, in helicopters, it's like 30 seconds later, 5 minutes later, 10 minutes later, I reevaluate. And constantly we're iterating that process and reevaluating. It's the same thing in your financial life and your business life. So the one thing that I'd recommend, if I could go back and do it again, is I would really look hard at reinvesting back into my business. I think I did a really good job of that, but that's probably the biggest return that you can make. If you're an entrepreneur and you're flipping houses or wholesaling houses, or you're making this active income and taking it all off and doing something like going to buy one rental property and then you continue to just flip one house at a time, that's what I was doing in the beginning. I'd flip a house, I'd make money, and then I'd invest that in a down payment on a rental property, and then I'd go try to flip one more house. It would take me a year to do it. I'd buy another rental property. So I wasn't growing fast enough in the beginning, where I could have probably grown faster if I took that $40,000 and reinvested it back into my flipping business or my wholesaling business for marketing to find more deals. So instead of taking it off the table, injecting it into a rental property that's paying $500 a month and it's cash flowing, but I'm not seeing like massive net worth increase. So when I started scaling my business a few years later, what I did was I dumped all the money that I was making back in my business, and I kind of slowed down on buying the rental properties. I was still going kind of slow. So I was able to inject the money back in the business. I did one flip and $45,000 one year. The next year, I did 67 transactions. It was 12 flips and 55 wholesale deals. And we did almost $700,000 in gross profit. And I had a small team. I think that year I made about $500,000. So I made $500,000 there. I was still flying for the Navy, making 120 grand. And what I did was I lived off my Navy income, and I didn't pump all of that cash back into my bank account. I pushed it all back into the business. And so then what I was able to do the next year is I was able to grow the company to do 135 deals instead of 67, and we did $1.3 million the second year. And then I pushed all that money back in again, and we did $2.3 million the next year and 187 deals. And that's when basically what I did was I put my income against the business. So on paper, I was paying myself a salary, but I wasn't pulling capital out of the company. And then we were flush with cash after about 2.5 years. And I took all the money back off the table and basically paid myself the $300,000 or $400,000 or maybe more that was still in the business that I pulled and took off the table, put it in my bank account. And then what I actually ended up doing then was buying my whole life policy for myself and my wife and my son, Will. So I took all that money and I put it into a whole life policy, which is a topic for another show. And then what I did was I started borrowing money against that to reinvest in the business and lend it to the business. So instead of just pumping it back in as equity, I started lending to the business on paper. So that was my story. I wish that I did that earlier where I pumped it into the business, because that was the place that I could make the biggest return. I'd rather invest in myself than any stock out there, or really even any houses in the beginning. So getting that up and running, it allowed me to grow faster than most people. It allowed me to scale. And then what I could do is I could then try to figure it out, and also up to my skill set. Like my skill levels went up and it started increasing. So I was able to have other opportunities start coming to me and think more dynamically. So that's one thing that I think that I would do differently, and I would challenge everybody that's kind of growing a business. Can you reinvest the majority of what you're making back into the business? So I kept my full-time job, and I love that I did that because I didn't have to pay myself. So I coach a lot of people now. I talk to a lot of people that they're paying themselves $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 a month, and they're wondering why they can't grow as fast as we did or why they can't scale as quickly. It's because they're not reinvesting back in their business. So that's probably the first place that I would go to, is reinvesting back in the business. And I don't mean just marketing, like increasing budgets and spending more money. It's always looking at the ROI. I knew that that was a place that I could grow and scale. So what I think entrepreneurs should do is grow, plateau. So that's why I would plateau and pay myself, and then grow again, plateau. And you want to get some stability in there. Dial in the processes. Maybe you look at the people and they're not the right folks, or you need to get a higher level entrepreneur. Like I hired a COO that third year, and he came in, and then that allowed me to go work with 7-figure flipping more and start doing coaching and mentoring and things like that, which opened up the door for this company. So those are a lot of things that I would recommend to you, and everybody's going to be different. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What are the opportunities? And what are the threats to you and your business? And figure out your goals. And you don't have to think of your goals 20 or 30 years down the road. These can be goals that are the next year or two, and you say, okay, let's go this direction, and then we can make a little pivot as we need to. Reevaluate it every 6 months, every year. What I would recommend that I did was I tracked my net worth on my net worth sheet. So every single month, at that time, I was looking at my net worth. And as it started going up, I said, what caused my net worth to go up that much? And when I was investing in stocks, that was never going up. It was just sitting, it was going up like slow, like super slow. It's like watching paint dry. And when I got into real estate, it just started going up and up and up. And I was like, what was it? Okay, I bought this rental property. Then I bought another rental. And then I flipped a house and it went up $45,000. Like, whoa, that's half my salary for the year. And so if you can watch it, like what you pay attention to, what you track, changes, right? It adjusts. If you're watching this video right here, you can see right there, there's a tracker for our YouTube channel. I'm working on our YouTube channel right now. Like I want to focus on that. So I'm watching it every single day. I walk in. Is our subscribers going up? And by the way, please subscribe to our YouTube channel right now. You can subscribe right now. 7-figure flipping YouTube channel. Subscribe right now. So it's going up every day. I walk in, we get 10 more, we get 10 more. It's like, oh my gosh, this is encouraging me to make more videos, to do more things, to start thinking about all that stuff. So for you, what you watch, what you pay attention to and you track changes, and you focus on that, you put more effort in that. So start tracking your net worth, start tracking your cash flow numbers, start looking at that. So what would I have done differently? I wouldn't have done anything differently, but hopefully you can take something from this, like something from it for you, figure out where you are, where's the market, what's the market cap? What's available to you? What do you want to be involved in? What are you really strong at? What are you really weak at? What are some partnerships and some relationships that you have that you could leverage to do something? And so I know a lot of people are getting into short-term rentals now. I think that's amazing. A lot of people are thinking about single-family rentals. A lot of people going into multifamily. A lot of people flipping, wholesaling. But take your active income and figure out where to put it. Like, what is the passive way that you're going to do it? And it might be in the beginning, I just want to grow my active income. And that's what I did. I just grew my active income, and my passive income, I grew it slightly with those rental houses. But then I had a tax problem. And so then I went to work on my tax problem. That's single family or multifamily. You can have tax write-offs and bonus depreciation in either one of those. But it wasn't more flipping and wholesaling. So I scaled and grew the business. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to plateau. I'm going to pull the money off the table, figure out where to put it. And it wasn't more loans. The more loans that I did, that was all active income too. So I still do those things, but I really look at my tax burden now, which became a problem for me. That wasn't a problem before. It was a threat that popped up, right? And then the opportunity to buy 7-figure flipping, this company, to grow my active income, that was an opportunity that came along that I never thought would come along. I would never be able to foresee that. So you got to navigate these opportunities and threats as they come. Think about your strengths and weaknesses each time, and then dial in on what that is. It's going to be different for all of you. but real estate is the way. I'm telling you right now, like real estate is the way to financial freedom, net worth growth, and passive income, and tax depreciation. Like there's so many benefits of it. So if you're not investing and you're listening to this right now, get off the fence, jump in, hang out with us on our 7-Figure Flipping podcast, our 7-Figure Flipping YouTube channel, all of the events that we do, Flip Hacking Live, Multifamily Live, all the stuff that we do, it's right there for you. We even do a RIA all the time right here in Nashville at 7fria.com. Like there's so many opportunities to get involved with us and grow your real estate knowledge, your information, and try to figure out where you're going to navigate and where you're going to put this money. And you might, the question is also, is now the right time? I'm going to answer that on upcoming shows, videos, all the stuff that we do. But now is like, the time is now. You have to get in and get involved. You can make money in any market, and I'm going to show you how in the upcoming show. So hopefully this is helpful for those of you that are kind of like scratching your head after the last one, wishing that I can answer like, what should you do? Well, it's up to you. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Map that out, and then just come up with a plan for a year or two, and you'll be right there. Okay, I will see you on the next one. If you are hanging out with us on YouTube, subscribe right now. Like subscribe to our channel, hit the bell, share it with somebody, and tell somebody about this, what we're doing. I would love to get that number right there to tick up. So thanks for hanging out with me. I'll see you guys soon. Bye.